Okay, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It's that time of the year already. I've been doing Oscar coverage for months now, going through rounds of early predictions, talking about the films I've been seeing periodically, analyzing nominations for other awards shows, and it is officially time to unveil my picks, my official predictions for the 2019 Academy Award nominations. I usually do a couple quick prefaces before the video begins, before the actual predictions begin, so let me get those out of the way really quick. Last year I said that those were some of the hardest predictions I'd ever had to compile. I don't necessarily feel that way this year. However, what I've noticed this year is it is the year of the fifth slot. I think you're seeing a lot of instances and categories where you have four pretty solid locks, though there's always room for something crazy to happen, and you have a fifth slot that could go one of two or three or four ways. I find that to be especially true for director, lead actor, and lead actress, and I'll delve a little deeper into that when I get there. But I find that to be a very interesting concept because I discover that I do usually struggle with a fifth slot every now and again. But I think in this year in particular, with the Golden Globe nominations and the SAG nominations and sort of their differences in that fifth place, it's an interesting thought process to have when going, okay, who do we think will fill these? God knows the Critics' Choice Award nominations don't help because they nominate like 6 or 7 per category. So I found that to be quite interesting, and I thought that that'd be something to talk about real quick before I get into the video, because that's something that I will bring up. These are what I believe will be nominated, not what should be nominated. I will make a video down the road discussing what I think, if I got my vote, if they handed me a ballot and they said, what do you think should be nominated in these categories, this is what I would check off. If you're interested in that video, that'll come pretty soon. But this is what I think, using Oscar history, using the films that I've seen this year, using just what I know about filmmaking in general, this is what I believe will be nominated at the 2019 Academy Awards. I have seen all of these films. Unlike last year, I had missed out on The Post and Phantom Thread because they had not come out here yet. But luckily, I have been able to see all of these movies this year. So I feel pretty damn confident in terms of talking about them and really analyzing them in a sense where I know what the Academy likes and I know what they kind of tailor themselves to. And so I think that I feel pretty good going into these in terms of discussion. And these are the primary awards. In this video, you will be seeing Best Picture, Best Director, Best Leading Actor, Leading Actress, Supporting Actress, Adapted Screenplay, and Original Screenplay. I'm hoping to do a technical award video pretty soon, maybe a foreign film video, break them up a little bit. But these are the primary awards. These are what are known as like the Big Six. People like to call them, even though there's 8. But with that being said, let's kind of jump right into it. I'm going to start with Best Picture. So, you never know how many they're going to nominate. They can nominate 7, can nominate 9, can nominate 10, which is why this category is often the hardest to predict, because you don't know how many to predict. So fuck them, I'm going to predict 8. And then I have 2 that I think are possibles that could either be added on depending on how many they nominate or could swap out with some of these, and I'll kind of say what I think could be swapped out. So the first one that I have is A Star is Born. Another theme that I'm going to bring up throughout this video is the idea of popular film. I addressed a long time ago the changes that they were thinking to make with the Best Popular Film, and obviously that is at the very least being put on hold for right now. However, I think that they are going to pay somewhat of a particular focus to movies that did well among a large crowd, movies that were successful among audiences, and A Star is Born manages to be a movie that the Academy's history shows that they love, while also tailoring to an audience standpoint where people can go and see it and love it. The box office numbers show that. The fact that Shallow is still playing on the goddamn radio says that. I feel very confident in A Star is Born to be kind of all across the board, and I even think it's a front-runner for Best Picture in actually several different categories. And I think that it's front-running in other places like lead actor and lead actress and possibly even director sort of give it that extra boost in terms of a Best Picture nomination. It's kind of got everything the Academy's looking for. It's got actual singing. It's got a story with a heart to it. It's lengthy. They love that. I think that this is a very important film to look to when it comes to Best Picture, not just in being nominated, but in winning. If Beale Street could talk, I do have this movie in here. This is one that I think could maybe be swapped out if it comes down to that. I actually just got to see this movie, and I think it's spectacular. Barry Jenkins directs a very different story with a very similar style to Moonlight, and it's clear that they liked that. I think that they're going to like it again. I think that they're portraying a very important message, and it's not overdone. It's kind of at a perfect level in terms of where it is in delivering subtle messages, and as a whole, in terms of a plot line being important to today's society. The Academy likes to reflect their loves in terms of, okay, is this relevant right now? A lot of previous Best Picture winners even entail that. And I don't think this will win, but I think that it has enough going for it in that respect to be nominated. The only reason I don't think it would be nominated for Best Picture if I had to go back against this is I don't think it has that much momentum in other categories. I think it's often you'll find it at like a lower down number, like a 7th or an 8th in certain areas. Maybe not in screenplay, but like in director, and I'll kind of touch on that in a little bit. That's the only thing I could see kind of anchoring it, but for now, I definitely see it showing up. Black Panther, this is much to my dismay. I've talked about the fact that I think this movie is okay at best, but I've also said that this Best Popular Film Award, they should have just renamed it the Black Panther Award. There was no doubt in anyone's mind that if this award was to continue and actually make it into the award show, Black Panther was going to win. And now that that's been scrapped, it has to be in Best Picture pretty much. I don't see a situation in which it's not in Best Picture. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I don't think it'll be in many major categories other than picture and screenplay, but the uproar that there would be if this film is not in Best Picture is pretty much enough to put it there. Even though I'm not a fan of the film pretty much whatsoever, I don't think many people are questioning that this film will be in this category, especially since they got rid of the Best Popular Film category. BlacKkKlansman, this is sort of the Get Out for this year for me, a movie that came out slightly earlier in the year, and people were unsure throughout the season as to whether it was going to get the attention that it deserved, as well as people thought it might. And slowly but surely it gained momentum. People were still talking about it as the months went on, and then it came out pretty strong at the Golden Globes, and even came out pretty strong at the SAG Award nominations and at the Critics' Choice nominations. So it really actually elevated itself to a position that I may not have anticipated when I first saw it, and I think that it's in a really good position right now, not just in the Best Picture category, but sort of all across the board. I think we're going to see BlacKkKlansman in a pretty heavy amount. I think it will be similar to Get Out, where it appears in a lot of categories many people may not have predicted it to be in, but I'm actually predicting it to be in, and I'll get there in a little bit. The Favorite, which since Venice Film Festival has been a favorite, Yorgos Lanthimos has not been really given a shot at picture yet because the films he's made are so oddball and wacky, and this one is too, but I think that almost goes in favor of him because there are oftentimes so many historical dramas nominated for Best Picture. You see that so often, and I think that's sort of been slowing down a little bit, and now that there's an original take on that, there's a very stylistic and unique approach to that kind of film, and almost a comedic touch on it, and just a little bit of an extra layer. I think that's something the Academy's looking for in terms of nominating another movie this year. I think that's why Mary Queen of Scots was sort of pushed to the background, and The Favorite was brought so far into the center of attention. And I think it's a front runner, possibly, to win this category, depending on how things go for it throughout the season and in other categories, but I have no doubt this will be in here. Green Book, another movie that just spiraled to the top after Toronto Film Festival. One that I saw the trailer for, thought it could be kind of cheesy and maybe just a shrug off of like, yeah, they tried. But when it won TIFF, that was huge. Winning TIFF is a pretty solid precursor for, at the very least, showing up at the Oscars. If I recall correctly, 3 Billboards won last year, and while it didn't win a ton, it still, A, did pick up 2 major awards, and B, was nominated in a pretty strong slew of categories. Green Book really kind of shot towards the top, and I gotta give them credit for that. Roma, there's probably your best foreign film winner. I'd be shocked if it wasn't. This is one that, kind of alongside A Star Is Born, has sort of traveled with the front runners since the beginning of the season. A lot of people have gone, okay, you have Alfonso Cuarón making sort of his passion project, and all of a sudden people are going, yeah, there's a front runner for Best Picture, and its noise has never died down. The reviews were exactly what it needed to be, nothing less than stellar. If I recall, it won the Golden Lion, I'm pretty sure, which I also believe Shape of Water won last year. Correct me if I'm wrong. I am correct. I just checked. And that's not always a precursor for a Best Picture winner. It's actually often not. But with The Shape of Water taking it last year, you could be looking at a new precursor for the Best Picture award. I'm not saying I think Roma will win, but I definitely think it'll be nominated. And then you have Vice, which I'm a little shakier on, actually. I do still think it'll be nominated because of how much the Academy loved The Big Short, and Vice is such a similar style when it comes to filmmaking. I didn't love Vice nearly as much as I loved The Big Short. I think Vice is actually just a solid movie, but I think it is one the Academy will appreciate, especially in today's political climate. There are a lot of parallels in its filmmaking and its messages that it's bringing across that are very similar to what we're looking at now, and considering every presenter will come out and make a Trump joke yet again this year, I think it's definitely one to look for. Taking 6 noms at the Golden Globes, while a lot of people will argue isn't important, it is important. You look at La La Land, which was just kind of everywhere, and it is important to show up at the Golden Globes. It is still a precursor, not a very, an entirely strong precursor, but the fact that it was the most nominated film there does mean something. It means that it's going to show up in some sense, and I do have the confidence in it for Best Picture, even though I'm not entirely positive I would want it there. My 2 possibles that I have in terms of swap outs and possibilities there, I have First Man, which boy did First Man get fucked over. If you go back to October 12th when it came out, the unfortunate truth is that everyone was going back to see A Star is Born in that second weekend. They were either going to see it again or they were taking their friends to see it for the first time because it made so much noise, and you just kind of saw First Man wither away into the background. Very underwhelming release. Nobody really talking about it, and I think it would have to campaign really, really hard to show up. I think it is possible. I just don't think it's very likely. And I also have Mary Poppins Returns, which I actually think is more likely. Every now and then they'll like to throw a kids movie in Best Picture, just a quick PG that they can put in there. Usually it's an animated film, but this time around there's an opportunity for it to be a live action film because it was received so well among critics, and it is just a pretty damn good movie. It holds up to the original pretty freaking well, and if they're going to put any movie like this in Best Picture, it's going to be Mary Poppins. The 2 that I think could be swapped out would be Vice and Beale Street. Those are your 2 that I think I would personally see being taken out if those 2 were to be put in, but I wouldn't count on it. Those other 8 are my official Best Picture predictions. Best Director. Let's get on to another category. So, first things first, I have Bradley Cooper for A Star is Born, and this is another one where I have 4 that I'm pretty damn sure on and 1 that I'm shaky. So I'll do the 4 I'm pretty sure on, and then I'll move to the 1 that I'm shaky on. That's how I'm going to structure this. Bradley Cooper for A Star is Born. It's only happened twice in Academy history where anybody has ever won Best Director and Best Actor, I'm pretty sure. If I recall correctly, it was Laurence Olivier and, what's the guy from, Roberto Benigni. If I recall correctly, those are the only 2 instances where they've ever won both. I think they're either this year going to give Bradley Cooper lead actor or best director, and I think they're probably going to give him lead actor, but I definitely think they're going to throw him in director. He came out with a directorial debut in a very strong fashion, making a movie for the masses and for the Academy to love. It's a very unique touch on this story they've seen several times, and I think if they're going to nominate a remake and nominate a director for a remake, they're going to want to nominate someone with sort of a fresh vision on it, someone who's willing to modernize it, and that's really what Bradley Cooper does, so I think he'll be in here. Alfonso Cuarón for Roma, I don't see much of a doubt there. I mean, he's also been a name that's, since the beginning of the season, just constantly traversed through these months and remained a frontrunner consistently. He makes a very meticulous film, a movie that you can tell a lot of thought and effort is poured into every shot. The Oscars love that. I think that's why Jordan Peele managed to get a nomination for Get Out, and I have no doubt whatsoever Cuarón will be in here. Yorgos Lanthimos for The Favorite, even though he missed out at the Globes, but there's no way McKay gets nominated in my opinion. I just don't think that's going to happen. He, like I said, he's the one who manages to make The Favorite a unique and stylistic film, which is exactly what I think they're looking for when it comes to this genre now. and that's again why Mary Queen of Scots is missing out. But I think that they're gonna they have to accredit Yorgos Lanthimos for this film, unless they decide to do something weird like when they didn't nominate Nolan for Inception for directing, but like nominated it for pretty much everything else. I don't see that happening. I think that the backbone of this film is Yorgos Lanthimos behind the camera. I think that's why it works as well as it does, and it's why it's as unique as it is, and I think they're definitely going to give him the credit for that. And Spike Lee for BlacKkKlansman, who I was actually kind of shaky on throughout the season. I was not sure as to whether or not he was going to make the cut. But as BlacKkKlansman has blown up more and more, it's become more and more apparent to me that they have to nominate the director of the film. That's slowly but surely creeping its way back into being one of the most viewed films when it comes to Oscar predictions and Oscar nominations. He's never received a Best Director nomination, and it's high time he gets one. He's one of the most influential directors in filmmaking right now, and making such a relevant picture. I think that this is the perfect opportunity for him to be nominated. Now that fifth slot, I was debating between a couple. I don't think it'll be Ryan Coogler. I really don't. I think they're just going to put Black Panther in Best Picture and then Best Screenplay. I don't think there's the room for them to give it these awards just because they think it needs to be. I think some people will vote it, but I don't think it will receive enough votes all across the board to get in there. Then the two I was stuck between were Barry Jenkins for If Beale Street Could Talk and Peter Farrelly for Green Book. And the reason I'm going with Peter Farrelly for Green Book is because with Green Book being such a front runner, in my opinion, for Best Picture, something that a lot of people are looking towards that could win, I find it difficult to believe that they won't put the director in there. I think last year with 3 Billboards, it was shown with Martin McDonagh not being nominated that, all of a sudden that can crush a Best Picture frontrunner. That can really, really bring it down. And the last time a movie won Best Picture without even being nominated for a director was Argo, but it's once in a blue moon. And I'm not saying Green Book will win Best Picture. I do think it has a strong shot. And because of that, I think that elevates Peter Farrelly's chances. And I just don't think that If Beale Street Could Talk is making enough noise to garner something like a Best Director nomination. But it's so hard for me because they clearly love Jenkins' style. They gave him Best Picture a couple years ago, and it's surprising to think that they could put him in picture, but not director for his second bout around, which is arguably as good as his first film. But if I really had to lean one way or another, I would give it to Farrelly for those reasons, just because of the momentum that Green Book has been gaining, and I think If Beale Street Could Talk is just a little bit lower on that spectrum, a little bit lower on people's lists of going, oh yes, that film, that's one that we really need to pay attention to, just because Green Book became that film after TIFF. It's one that everyone was going, oh, everyone's saying, I gotta go see Green Book, and it's the kind of film Academy voters love, and he directs a very believable relationship, a very believable friendship, and progresses it very strongly, and so I do have Peter Farrelly as my prediction. Best Leading Actress, so yet again, I'm going to go with my 4, and then the 5 that I think is the little shakier one, but the 4 that I have pretty set in stone. Glenn Close for The Wife, who, again, throughout the season has been a frontrunner, though I don't think she's as strong of a frontrunner to win anymore as she was. You've got someone with 6 nominations, I believe, under their belt, somebody who brings a very strong, centric role to a very important and interesting film that I don't think is receiving a ton of attention nearly as much as it should deserve, but they're campaigning the hell out of Glenn Close, and if she's going to take it, it's going to be kind of one of her turn moments where maybe she doesn't entirely deserve to win, but there's enough campaigning going for her as like a, hey, this is Glenn Close, 6-time Academy Award nominee. I think they're going to place her in this category. I think she really makes that film watchable. I don't think it's a great movie, but I think that her reading that dialogue actually makes it watchable, and that's a hard task, and I think that's something the Academy does notice every now and then. Olivia Colman for The Favorite, who I think has become a new kind of first or second placer. She's just fantastic in this, never having been nominated for an Oscar before, and she puts on a very versatile performance, which the Academy loves. She can go from just being utterly hysterical to being utterly heartbreaking, and she works so well off of her supporting performances, both of them, which I'll talk to in a little bit. But that's very key for a leading actress nominee. You have to play off of those supporting performances or even possibly other leading performances so well, and the film is just, it's her. It's the story of Queen Anne, and she manages to be the center of attention so well while also playing off of these other aspects of the film so well that there's no way she won't be in here. Lady Gaga for A Star Is Born, I've talked about this endlessly in other videos. The Academy loves to give musical performers a shot at not only being nominated for winning an Oscar, not only a shot at being nominated for an Oscar, but winning an Oscar. You know, you look at Jennifer Hudson, you look at Halle Berry, who's not a musical performer, but wasn't an actress, and then was an actress in a film and went on to win. Jared Leto, who was a musical performer, and I think Lady Gaga has that shot now, especially with the fact that everyone knows Shallow is going to win Best Original Song. I think that elevates her even more. She's a shoo-in. And then Melissa McCarthy for Can You Ever Forgive Me, who puts on a performance that nobody really expected out of her anymore, considering she just became such a shtick of herself. And when a performer that you sort of start to think not much of puts something on that turns heads, the Academy also likes to turn their heads to it and go, oh yeah, remember when we nominated her back in 2011 for Bridesmaids? Alright, her turn again, we'll throw her in this category. This is a movie that I think will only really show up in performances and then a screenplay nomination. I don't have it in Best Picture. I don't think the film is particularly strong enough or made enough noise within Academy voters to be in Best Picture, but I definitely have Melissa McCarthy being in here for leading actress. And then the fifth slot, I was stuck between two again. I had Yalitza Aparicio, I'm gonna hope that's right, for Roma, and Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns. And the reason, even though I never thought I would say this, I'm going with Emily Blunt for Mary Poppins Returns, is because I think Roma is so technically impressive, and so directionally impressive, and so script writing impressive. I think it's going to be one of those Best Picture frontrunners that's up for all of those kinds of awards, but not a performance nomination, because the film isn't necessarily about the performances. You're not watching it for the performances. And yes, she's great, but you're more so taking in the visual element of the film. You're basking in this filmmaking glory. And as a result, you're not noticing as much the lead actress, right? When it comes to Mary Poppins, a film, the original, in which Julie Andrews won for, you not only have Emily Blunt, who puts on a really solid, like, homage. I feel like that's the wrong word, because she kind of gives Julie Andrews a run for her money. I mean, she takes that character and manages to make it her own, but also being very respectful towards it, and putting on a performance that manages to encapsulate the entire film. I mean, the whole thing is her. You know, the whole thing centers around her working, and she works, and she's great. She does her own singing. She manages to make that film vibrant and come to life. I think you're definitely looking at Emily Blunt for leading actress nomination. Just got a phone call. Yo.
Yo.
What's up?
I wanted to ask you. So what'd you give Venom? The movie.
Like a 2 out of 10?
Seriously?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it's an ass. Anyway, that was like a 6-minute conversation. So now I'm going to talk about Best Leading Actor, which I also find to be the same as Leading Actress, where I think there are 4 locks, and then you have a 5th slot that's kind of up for negotiation. So Christian Bale for Vice, I think, has become a lock. Christian Bale being the method actor he is, and playing a character that's very important right now, in terms of comparison, he does a phenomenal job morphing himself into Chaney, not just the physicality of it, but the mannerisms of him, the way that he speaks, his dialect, and if Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour shows anything, they heavily appreciate that, and I promise you they're going to appreciate that again. They love Christian Bale, they've nominated him 3 times now, given him 1 Oscar. While I won't say I think he'll win, I think he'll definitely be up for it. Bradley Cooper for A Star Is Born, like I said, they're gonna put him in both. They're gonna put him in lead actor and director, and I think they might actually give it to him here. I think he has the leg up on Rami Malek because he does his own singing and he plays his own guitar. He poured his heart and soul into this film, a film that's done well amongst audiences and has done well with other guilds and award shows and people putting this film up for awards. He is the heart and soul of this film, and there's no chance they don't give him a nomination. Not only maybe they'll give him a win, and I think the singing and the music and all that stuff elevates that even higher. Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody. While I don't think he will win, and I think, you know, the fact that Bradley Cooper does sing and do his own music gives him a little bit more momentum than I think it gives Rami Malek. You have another individual who completely morphs himself into this real-life character, this figure, this character of Freddie Mercury. I don't know if a lot of people were that confident in his ability to do this. But similarly to Chaney, as often as they can, if it's done right and it's done respectfully, anyone who successfully portrays this real-life person that requires so much thought and in-depth processing as to how they acted, how they spoke, what their mannerisms were like, what they were thinking in every individual moment, if they portray that in a subtle yet also over-the-top fashion, depending on the character, like Freddie Mercury, they're going to give them that nomination. Even though Bohemian Rhapsody probably won't show up in a whole lot of places, I think Rami Malek has the momentum going, and I think he's got the campaigning especially for it that he needs to be nominated. And I also have Viggo Mortensen in for Green Book, who is particularly stellar because he manages to take such this stereotype, this Italian mobster stereotype, but ground it and make it humane and make it interesting and make it connectable, which is a very tough job. And that's something that turns the Academy's head, is not just a connectable character, but one that sort of comes from this is how they all are, this is what they're all like. Something that in a lesser film would grow to be irritating or would grow to be not fun to watch. And as opposed to that, you're looking at a performance that you can really feel something out of when it comes to Viggo. They also like to nominate him even when all the odds are against him, like Captain Fantastic. He was a very, maybe it's a pipe dream if we're lucky. And they put him in there. They proved that they like Viggo. The whole word thing probably doesn't help his chances, but it kind of moved on. He released a very hearty apology, and Mahershala Ali sort of backed him, so I think that he's kind of in the clear there. I don't think that'll impact him too much, so I think we'll be seeing him nominated. Then you've got then you have this fifth slot. This is possibly the hardest one. You have Ethan Hawke for First Reformed, which it was very hard of me to not give him this slot. A lot of people are talking about his possibilities, but missing the Globe, man, that's tough. And missing the SAG is tough. And I know he won the New York Online Critic thing, and I know that that's kind of big, but missing out on those two is big. Now, I think that he could sort of sneak himself in there. So could Ryan Gosling. If they really decide to bring First Man back, Gosling could sneak in there. But I don't think either of them, as of right now, are going to do it. And I don't think Willem Dafoe is going to do it. Even though he was in there for the Globe, which did surprise me, I just don't think he has the campaigning for it, and I don't think enough people know even what the hell that movie is. So with the rise of this film, and with its continuous showing up, I'm going to put John David Washington in for BlacKkKlansman. Because at first he was, like Viggo in Fantastic, he was a pipe dream. He was one that people were like, maybe. Maybe that'd be a crazy thing. And then all of a sudden, he starts showing up and showing up and showing up because this movie is slowly but surely, becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. And I also find it difficult to believe that if they're going to nominate Adam Driver in supporting actor, which I do think they're going to do, it would be tough for them to not give John David Washington a leading actor nomination because the film is him. I mean, it's all about him. And I think they're going to do it. That's a tough call for me. It was a scary decision, giving it to him over Hawke. But I did it. Sue me. Best Supporting Actress, these are actually 5 that I think have been kind of locked for a while, even with the weird stuff at the SAG. Now that I've seen Mary Queen of Scots, because I don't think Emily Blunt has a remote chance of being nominated for A Quiet Place, but before I saw Mary Queen of Scots, I was like, okay, maybe you could actually see Margot Robbie get in there, as opposed to Claire Foy for First Man. And then I saw the movie, and I don't think that's going to happen. Margot Robbie's really good, but she's I don't think actually in enough, which usually I don't have an issue with. In terms of a supporting actress performance, usually I'm like, sometimes the less you're in, the better, in terms of your chances, because it gives you that opportunity to stand out even more when you show up. But the story is so heavily centric around her, yet she's like not in very much, and it's kind of jarring and strange, and as a result of that, I don't think it's going to happen. I know there's been talk about Nicole Kidman for Boy Erased. I saw that movie. I don't think that's going to happen. I think her performance is actually a little bit much. And I don't particularly think that among the other performers that are up for it, a lot of whom put on really strong, subtle performances, because I think it's kind of the year, in terms of these supporting performances, for subtlety. for whatever reason, most of these performers that I'm looking at right now that are up for these categories put on really subtle, more quiet, timid performances. That's not to say all of them do. It's to say the bulk of them do. And I think Nicole Kidman is like so out there and wacky. It's a little, I think it'd be a little oddball in terms of the rest of this group. So I feel pretty good about all 5 of these, to be honest with you. So I have Amy Adams for Vice, who I actually think has a very good shot at winning. She puts on just this very vile and seething performance that isn't commonly seen out of Amy Adams. And like I said, it's a very subtle kind of seething. And I think if any way she's going to win, it's going to be one of those, it's her turn. She was snubbed for Arrival. This would be her 6th nomination. And I think her whispered chances of a win and this sort of unique performance for her, someone who the Academy is so tailored to nominating, I think this is a very good thing for her, and I think she's definitely going to be nominated. Claire Foy for First Man is obviously the one that I'm a little bit shaky on, but I couldn't think of anyone to substitute her that I felt confident in. She's, for some reason, the most confident that I feel in terms of putting her in this category. And I think that, she does kind of steal the show, in a sense. She manages to be this very strong character, almost a very tortured character in scenes, and she does it in a very strong fashion. She always has this presence when she's on screen, and that's very important when it comes to supporting performance nominations. Obviously, First Man has died off a little bit, but I wouldn't put it past them to throw them one nomination amongst. I'm sure it'll receive some technical nominations. But if anyone I think is going to be nominated for this, I think Claire Foy has the best shot. Gosling just kind of got knocked out because that category is so tight, lead actor that is. But Claire Foy is one who's ridden the title wave throughout the season, and I think people are still relatively confident in her ability to be nominated, even though that movie has sort of fallen off a little bit, as am I. Regina King for If Beale Street Could Talk is, as I was saying earlier, sometimes the less you're in, the better. She's not in a ton. She's in a solid amount, but when she is in it, she's in it. That's, in my opinion, the most important thing for a supporting performance when it comes to Oscars. You have to have this presence that always draws the attention to you when you are the supporting performance. When you are on screen, you have to be the one that's being noticed. Or your dynamic with that leading performer has to be so good, which I think is what comes into play with The Favorite, and I'll get there in a second. But with this one, every time Regina King is on screen, she's the center of attention. She's the one you're paying attention to, and she's fantastic. She really makes this movie work. She makes her character work really well, and I think that even if this movie falls off, and even if this movie isn't anywhere else, I find it very difficult to believe they're not going to nominate Regina King, even with a lack of a SAG nomination. I do think her lack of a SAG nomination hurts her chances of winning and helps Amy Adams' chances of winning, but I do still think she'll be in there. And then the last two that I have are Emma Stone and Rachel Weisz for The Favorite. With these two, it's often difficult to say you're going to have two performances from the same film in the same category. It did happen last year with Three Billboards, and I think what that showed is if they're going to do it, they have to be very different performances. And it's unusual because oftentimes when you nominate two from the same film in a category, one will win, and I don't think that's actually going to happen this time. But they're both so different in the film, yet both so pivotal to the success of their characters, of the film, of their performances, and of Olivia Colman's performance, which again, that dynamic between supporting and lead is always important, that I find it difficult to say they would nominate one and not the other. I think they're kind of a package deal. I think you need both. Because Emma Stone is the developed character. Emma Stone starts as this very timid, quiet, almost vulnerable character who throughout the course of the film develops very naturally and becomes this almost vicious, more, I don't know what other words I'd use to describe her, but cocky, maybe even character, whereas Rachel Weisz is sort of always this very interesting, eye-drawing character that's sort of brutal the entire time, but almost manages to look even better as a result of Emma Stone. And I think the two of them work so well hand in hand that you just can't have one without the other. and I think they will both be nominated, even though it might be unusual that one of them may not win. I'm not saying it's impossible for one of them to win. I think it could be a sneak out, and I think the fact that both are nominated helps their chances in that regard, but I see both of them being in this category for those aforementioned reasons. Then we get supporting actor. God, I've been talking for a while. Supporting actor, I also feel very confident in. I kind of made these predictions. If you watch my Golden Globe nomination reactions, I sort of cemented these. I feel very good about these. Mahershala Ali for Green Book, who puts on, in my opinion, a very similar performance to Moonlight. He's proven to be very good at putting on a very timid performance with a lot behind it, with a lot of layers that aren't exactly seen on the surface. You have to really analyze each moment of his performance to understand the full complexity of it, and the Oscars love that, a la Casey Affleck for Manchester, or a la Mahershala Ali for Moonlight. He's a little less subtle in this movie as he is in Moonlight. In Moonlight, he's very down-to-earth and low-key, and he has a couple moments in this where, he'll have a little blow-up or something like that, and I think that even shows a little bit of versatility on his part. But he, alongside Viggo, carry this film. They're absolutely pivotal to it, and they're both characters that it's difficult to see any other actor play. I think the Oscars really like when you have a character and you have an actor where you watch it and you go, I couldn't see anyone else play this part. This year you've got like Christian Bale for Vice, you've got Rami Malek for Bohemian Rhapsody. In previous years you've got someone like J.K. Simmons for Whiplash, and I don't think there's anyone else that could play this part other than Ali. Timothée Chalamet for Beautiful Boy, even though that movie really dropped off the face of the planet due to its reception just being fine. Chalamet has become such a hardcore name within the Oscars now, and because so many people believe he was close last year, he wasn't. But because he was in such heavy contention for Call Me By Your Name, I think they're almost going to feel obligated to give him a nomination when he makes this much noise. He's really great, and he is the standout performance. And it's one that's so grounded, and he worked so hard to make realistic, and the weight loss and all that. That's all goodies and candy for the Academy to throw him a nomination, and I think they'll do so. Adam Driver for BlacKkKlansman, I sort of talked about this, but he was one that really kind of stood out of nowhere and gave a performance that everybody was pretty astounded by. Another thing the Oscars like, which I sort of said about Lady Gaga, is when a performer kind of comes out of nowhere with a great performance. Like, with DiCaprio, sometimes the reason it takes so long to give a performer an Oscar is just because they get so used to them giving a good performance, like Amy Adams. But then you have someone like Adam Driver, who's Kylo Ren, but all of a sudden really comes out and can steal the show in this film and works so well alongside John David Washington. Their chemistry is so strong, like I keep saying, that link between lead actor and supporting actor is so important. I think they're also a package deal, and I think one complements the other. Sam Elliott for A Star Is Born, who I do have in lieu of Sam Rockwell for Vice. Having seen Vice, Sam Rockwell should not be nominated. He's nominated for the Golden Globe, which is sort of weird, but like he's in a little bit, and it's not going to happen. Sam Elliott is long overdue. That's just kind of one way to put it. He's long overdue. He's a scene stealer. He's got to be in there. He's got to be in there. I don't feel that one needs much explanation. And Richard E. Grant for Can You Ever Forgive Me, who manages to coincide with Melissa McCarthy so well, making that performance, as I said earlier, a very performance-heavy film that sort of drives it and crosses the finish line with it. I think without Richard E. Grant, you don't really have that, and I think his chances are actually climbing as people realize, oh, he's one of those scene stealers, which I think historically goes better than the dynamic kind of performance. I think the scene stealer is oftentimes one to look out for, and I think he's really good at that. Alright. I'm going to try and go through these a little quicker because I feel like I've sort of said all I need to say about these next 10, and, I feel like I can sort of breeze through them, and I've been talking for a very long time. So, Best Adapted Screenplay. You've got A Star Is Born, obviously. It's going to be everywhere else. There's no way it's not going to get a screenplay nomination. It's just not going to happen. Adapted Screenplay, I'd also like to point out, is much tighter, I think, than original screenplay in terms of you've got a lot more contenders for picture in there. BlacKkKlansman is a movie that's so heavily based on its script being good. It really needed to master the comedy drama elements, and it does so damn near flawlessly in my opinion, and I think that that's sort of why it's going to get that recognition. Black Panther, I don't even want to talk about it. At the end of the day, it's very difficult for a film to be nominated for Best Picture and not be like anywhere else in terms of major awards, and I don't think Coogler's going to get a director nomination, so I do think they're going to throw it an adapted screenplay nomination, a la Logan last year. They're willing to throw that to comic book films now, and God knows if they're going to give it to one, they're going to give it to this one. If Beale Street Could Talk, fantastic screenplay. Obviously, they love Barry Jenkins' writing style. You look back at Moonlight, and this one really complements his writing style. It's very dialogue heavy, and it really relies on sort of this realistic conversing kind of style. It's not Sorkin dialogue where it's back and forth. You can tell every line is very heavily thought out, and the way it's delivered allows it to sort of elevate to this level of realism, which the Academy really likes. And I think that Jenkins will take another screenplay nomination. And then Can You Ever Forgive Me? That's a weird one for me, actually, to shoe in there, but I don't know. I think that because the performances are so strong, they're largely strong because of the dialogue that they're given. If I were to see one sort of get shaken out, it would be this film. But I do actually see it being in there. I kind of see this one as being a surprise to show up in adapted screenplay. I think people might be a little shocked when this one shows up. An original screenplay. I actually do have 8th Grade in here. I think you'll oftentimes see one movie that doesn't really show up anywhere else but shows up in screenplay, like The Lobster. And I think that'll be 8th Grade for this year. I don't think it really made enough noise or has enough going for it to be in other categories. But I think its screenplay is so strong, and it kind of is what makes the whole thing work, that the Academy will be willing to notice it in that respect. The Favorite, that's obvious. I mean, the script is just so fantastic. And, if the direction and the script work so well together, that I think you kind of have that dynamic going with that film. And since it's such a front runner in Best Picture, you gotta have a screenplay nomination. Green Book, I literally would say the exact same thing that I would say for The Favorite. I think that the dynamic between the direction and the screenplay is so strong and elevates the film to a Best Picture front runner. You have to have it screenplay. Roma, this is much different than Green Book and The Favorite. It's a much more subtle screenplay. People will make the argument like they made with Dunkirk that it won't be nominated in picture because almost of its lack of dialogue, but I disagree with that. I think in screenplay in particular, they're going to look towards character. They're going to look towards story development on top of dialogue, and Roma masters that so damn well. And original screenplay is a little bit looser this year when it comes to nominations and getting movies in there, that I think they have the room to put something like Roma in there, and I think they're going to do it. And then you have Vice. Which, whether you agree with it or not, they proved that they liked it with The Big Short. They gave it the damn Oscar. They like when you take a movie and a story like this and you manage to give it a lighter side and a darker side that hits home. They gave it to The Big Sick. I think they're going to give a nomination to Vice, or The Big Sick. Fuck me, The Big Short. But I don't think they're going to give it the win, but I definitely think they'll give it a nomination. Okay, there's no way that wasn't longer than my last predictions video, but that is it. That's my list. Those are my predictions. Please let me know what you thought in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts. I want to know what you think about this list. What do you agree with? What do you disagree with? There's obviously a lot of time left before the actual predictions arrive. Some of these might be subject to change, and if I do decide to maybe alter them, I might. If it's strong enough where I'm like, I need to alter this, I'll post a video about it. I'll do something about it. In terms of coming up, look for my what should be nominated for the Oscars, the reaction to the actual Oscar nominations themselves. My top 10 movies of the year list will be coming within the next couple of days, so look to that. Lots to come out. Thank you guys so much for watching. I love doing award season content. There's a lot more to come. If you enjoyed, please leave a like and subscribe. I do hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. God, my voice hurts. Holy Lord.